Thank you for calling customer service. How can I help you? Oh, I'm just kidding. This is Katie. I'm trying something new this time. I'm using the camera so you can see me, and I'm in a classroom, and nobody's here but me. So I hopefully won't get any interruptions. And I have things on the board. You probably can't see it, and you don't need to that much. I'll tell you what's on it. It's just the 3 topics that we're going to cover in this Code with Me. And I am wearing my CIS GRCC Computer Information Systems polo. So I'm very professional looking today. So I thought I'd put my face on here so you can see what I look like. And if you don't want me to ever do it again, I won't ever do it again. I have a new headset too, so I'm going to test it out this week and see if it works well with recordings. So to begin, what we're going to do in this learning module, or this Code with Me video, is we're going to focus on just 3 topics. And the reason for that is Chapter 3 was very intense. There's a lot of stuff in there. And I added an additional week so that you could spend some more time on it, read the chapter, and understand classes, objects, and methods. That was Chapter 3, but it had a lot of other things like constructors in there, and doing sets and gets and returning values out. So there's a lot of details in there. So just to give a quick definition, a class is a user-defined data type. So we created, in our homework, we attempted or created a class called bank account. And it had all of our generic things about a bank account, you know, a username, an account number, things like that. And then we created an object, which is just a big ol, as in ol, variable. And the variable contains everything that's in our class. So if our class has username and user password and bank account number, then when I create an object of my class, like bank account, my account, or account 1 like we did, and then account 2, that means that this object right here has everything that's in the class, which is just my user-defined data type, what I wrote. And then a method is a piece of code, or a chunk of code, let's call it chunk. A chunk of code that does a specific thing. So like our gets and our sets, it got data with a return statement, or set values in our class, and it's a method because it's a piece of code that we define in our class, so it's related to that class, things that we want to do, like get account name, get account number, get address, something like that. So that was Chapter 3, and it is a difficult chapter. It's a difficult concept, and I think as, well, I know, oh, why don't I just use my mouse? As we, Chapter 3, as we get on with our other chapters, we're not going to spend any more time on it, but as we go on, the concepts will come together more and they'll make more sense. So I know that some of you spent a lot of time on 3, and that's good. That's what you should have done. You probably spent more time than you wanted to, but you might have a better understanding than somebody who didn't spend that much time. So things will come together. We're going to go on with Chapter 4, and Chapter 4 is more on objects and classes. So it's more object concepts, but the 3 things, these are the 3 things that that I wrote on the board that we're going to focus our Code with Me on. Scope and blocks, and this starts on page 180, and overloading methods, and there's also a part on overloading constructors that you'll have to do as well, and that's on page 188. And then the third one is using built or pre-built methods or classes, things that already exist in any programming language. And we've done this. We've been doing this when we used, one example is using the input or using the scanner class to create an input object. That is something that we've already used. Another example, printf is a method, print is a method, println. These are parts of the compiler or part of the language that already exists that we just access and use. So system.out.println, we just use those. But now that we do classes, we're making our own. But there's a whole set of them that we're going to use, and this is covered or begins to be covered on page 215, and things like the math class, things that are in the math class and methods that we want to call. So by focusing, chapter 3 on these chapter 4 on these 3 concepts, you're gonna not have, our assignment is not going to do anything else but focus on these 3. There are the other concepts about ambiguity, calling constructors with parameters, the this reference, static fields, composition, and nested classes. Those are the other main objectives of chapter 4. But I want you to not focus on them right now. We're going to just understand another concept of classes and methods. With that said, those other concepts in the entire book is free range for the quiz. So when you take your quiz, when you take your quiz, you may have questions. Because I use a test bank, there will be questions that come from those other topics. So you'll have to read those other topics when you're taking the quiz. But for the code with me and the assignment, you won't have to. So I want you to open JGrasp, and we are going to create a new program to cover our first concept, which is scope and blocks. And if you open, I opened JGrasp today, and there's an update, so you might want to do that update too. That might be, I didn't do it because I'm on the campus Wi-Fi, and if you've been anywhere around campus lately, you've noticed the Wi-Fi is not working very well. Okay, so I'm not going to do my update, but I will when I get home. Try it out. I think it'll be cool. Unless, like, it's not from Apple, so it's not like it's, iOS 8 and then 8.1 and 8.2 or 8.01 or whatever. Anyway, my phone's not working very well right now. I'm going to give you a random smile now. See if you're still awake. And I will try not to sing. Oh, this is my focus paper. Okay, what we're going to do is page 180, where it talks about scope and blocks, and it gives you all the definitions. But one thing that we're going to do with our compiler is we're going to make sure that you use the Control-A and then do your generate CSD, because it takes your code and puts it in the blocks that it needs to be in. So what we do when we create a class is, so I'll code with me because this is our first concept, form letter writer. We are going to do that program in the back of the book. But when we open up this class, I always go down and close this automatically, end of class. Not automatically, but I open it and then I close it, and I put my comments there so that I know it's the end of the class. And the reason I do this is I have gotten lost in curly braces, I've gotten lost with semicolons, and once your code gets really big, you could get lost in opening and closing a section. Plus, it helps with scope in blocks, the concept of that we're going to focus on here. So you have a class. This is our class called Form Letter Writer. And then we always have main inside of here. Public static void main. And then we have arguments, string, hard brackets, args for arguments, and then again open, close, end of main. And then we would put, then we would put down here our other methods. So they will exist within the class, because here's the end. So they'll exist within the class, but they're not going to be within main or within another method. So every time you do an open curly brace, close it, close it, close it, close it. And then when you want to, if you're using JGRASP, you can do a Control A and then generate CSD, and it formats things over so it's easier to see things. And this is important, one, so you don't get messed up with your syntax, and two, because things have different scope. And what scope is the exact definition comes into scope. The exact definition is talked about at the beginning of the chapter, but it's part of methods that can see a variable. So if I define a variable here, int number equals 10, and then I want to print out this number, system.out.println, and I want to print out the number is, I'm going to erase this so you can type along or not and just listen. So see, I have a variable here called number, and I initialize it to 10. And then I have my main that displays it. Well, if I have a method down here, public static void display, and I want to call it display number, and end of display number method. You see how I open and close? Years of experience. You need to do that or you're going to end up crying. Maybe not. Okay, so here, let me do my, I pasted my same output that I had in main. I pasted it in my display number method. I'm going to do Control A and generate my CSD again. So I can see, okay, I have my class, I have main, and then I have other methods, and this one is independent. What you'll see when I try to run this or even compile it is that, oh, I should save my file. Save yours too. Form letter Java, yes. Yes. When I compile this, I'm going to get an error message, or even when I try to run it. Oh, no, I won't yet because I don't have. Maybe you caught this. Oh, I do have an error message. println plus number. Okay. Okay, let's look at this here. It says, I don't have a method call, but well, I'll put that in and I'll still get an error. But it says cannot find the symbol number, and it's referring to not this one here, but it's referring to this one here. And the reason for that is because the variable here has something called local scope. It's only available in that method, main. So when I come down here, when I say I want to display number, so I want to call this method, this is remember, invoking a method or calling a method. When I want to cause this to execute, I don't pass any variables in there, so I don't have any parameter lists, I don't have any arguments. So this line of code won't work because it doesn't know what number is. And that's because it has local scope. The alternative And I'll get the same error too. One error, doesn't know what this is. Now, the alternative is that you can create global variables. Ooh, what was that? You can create global variables. Global variables are not something that we typically want to do because they're easier to mess up. They're easier to access from other people or other parts of your code, and they always exist. So they have global scope, meaning you can use them in any 2 or 100 methods that you code. But because they have global scope, as soon as you hit execute on your program, it's always occupying memory. And if it's always occupying memory, it's always taking a resource away from something else the computer might be doing. So we're writing small programs. It's not a big deal. But if we were writing a program that flew an airplane and we had all global variables, and these global variables opened up when the airplane took off, and it took up 20 or 50% of the resources available on the airplane computer, and it took it away from other things like oxygen intake or whatever, then that would be a problem. That's how things like blue screen of death happens, or your computer locks up, is variables are occupying too much space all of the time. So if you wanted to create a variable, it would be up here and it would be public. So you would do like static double and then, or double and then maybe money. And then you could use this variable money in main or here or any other part of the code that you wanted to. So that's the concept of scope and blocks. And in this compiler, it is very useful to do the generate CSD. If you're using, I wonder where, I must have made that delete. If you're using other compilers, like I used to use Eclipse, it does auto-indent for you, and it's a little bit nicer, but it, JGrasp is really slimmed down, so it doesn't do that for you. But some other ones do, and it's easy. If not, just do Control-A and then view and generate CSD. Huh? Talking too much? Okay, this code here won't actually work, and I don't want you to turn that one in, but save it. I don't want you to turn that one in. We're going to go on to overloading methods. Actually, the program that I started, but I'm talking too much, and I don't want to keep you here forever, is exercise 1 on page 234 is to create a form letter that includes 2 overloaded methods named display salutation. The first one takes the first name only, and then the second one takes the first and the last name. If you're interested in that program or any of these programs from the exercises in the book that are even the you do it's in the book, send me an email and I can give you the code with so you can use it as an example. I won't give you code for things that we assign though. So save this program and close it. I don't want you to turn that one in for code with me. We're going to go on to 2 other programs that I want you to turn in for the code with me. This second concept is overloading methods, and we're going to code on page 235, we're going to code the billing class. So we'll make a new, let me clear this out. I'm going to make a new one, and I'm going to do, I got to start a new one first, new Java, and then public class, and it says in the book to create a class called billing. So open, close, and document, end of billing class. Make sure you do that. Now I'll save mine right away, billing.java, Perfect. Make my screen a little bit bigger. Okay, let me read the question. We're writing a class that includes 3 overloaded compute bill methods. Read about overloading methods. It's on page 188. I will show you how to do it, and then you have to understand it. There is a purpose for overloading methods. They're methods that have the same name, but they have to have different purpose. So they have the same. They're going to have the same name called compute bill, but they have to have a different number of arguments or a different data type for that. And part of one of these benefits is reusing code. So read about that on page 188. You can overload constructors, which we did in the bank account program, but I don't know if you knew about it because it was complex. And you can overload methods. So what we're going to do in this, remember, constructor just instantiates an object. What we're going to do in question 2 is exactly what it says on page 235. Create a class called billing, and then create 3 overloaded constructors compute bill. So the first bullet is when it receives a single parameter, it represents the price of 1 photo book ordered plus a tax, and it returns the total due. So let's start with that one. Up here, well, let's set up our main. So public static void main. I always have to look at my syntax too. String brackets arguments, and I have to look at it because, again, in some compilers it puts it in there for us automatically, and it's a little bit easier. I like JGRASS because it's simple, but there are other better compilers you might want to check out. End of main, and then we'd put our overloaded methods here. And overloaded just means they have the same name, but they have a different number of arguments. So we are, well, let's try to figure out what the book is asking us, because I think that some of the problem is these questions give us a lot of leeway to interpret, so we'll walk through it together. The first method is called compute bill, and let's just start with the name. I know that we need to put in data types, but we are just starting with the name first. So it says compute bill. I'm reading the first bullet on 235. When compute bill receives a single parameter, so we're going to accept one value called amount, and it doesn't say what to call it, so you can call whatever. It represents the price of 1 photo book. And then we're going to add tax to that and return the total due. So in my method, I'm going to open, close, end of first method. I'm going to code what it says it's going to do, which is add tax and then return total due. Return total due. Let's add tax. So amount equals amount plus amount times 8% tax. So I'll just do 0.08 here. You can use a static final variable publicly as well, and then a semicolon. Let me take Control A. I just want to format so I can see my blocks. There. Okay. First of all, I'm accepting an argument amount because that's what it says. It says it receives a single parameter. And then it says compute it, so it adds on the tax. So what I'm doing is, it doesn't tell me how to do the formula. I just did this in my little brain. So okay, so if our amount, let me walk you through this because I like to desk check things. But let's say that our cost of one photo book is $10. So it'll say $10 plus, I don't know if I can do parentheses, 10 times 0.08 is what you're saying. That comes out to one, that's this, $10 times 0.08 is 80 cents. So that's what this would compute to. And then we're going to add the cost of the book to it, which would be $10.80. So this is what we're setting amount to. I don't know what I did before. And then we're going to return total due. Now, I could create a variable here called double total due equals amount, or I could just not use the same variable. So I could do it that way, since I said return total due, and return the total due. I could just return it into, I could just return amount, or let me do it how I probably would do it. I would probably up here go double total due equals 0, and then instead of putting it back into there, I'd say total due equals that and return total due. Okay, that's what I would do. Now, it doesn't say here what to have, public, static, whatever, but what we know from creating methods is that this would be public data type. We use the static keyword, and then we use the data type of the type of variable we intend to return. So total due is a double, so we're returning it out of this method. So that's why this is double. Now in main, what you would do is you have to accept a value. So we're going to create a variable up here called double. I don't know if it says here. Write a main that tests all three methods. Okay, it doesn't. So we'll say double bill, and this is what we're going to use to call all three methods. So the first, what is it? The first one was the cost of one photo book. Receives a single parameter of one photo book ordered. And the second one is 2 parameters, which is the price of a book and the quantity. So right now we just have 1. Let's not call this bill. Let's call this cost of one book. One photo book. And we're going to set that to, I used the example of $10, but let's use $10.99. So each book costs $1. I mean, why did I say $1? $10.99. I hope they don't have a discount in here, because then we'll have to redo things. I mean, a discount, like the more the books they order, the cheaper it is. No, we just have coupon value. Okay. Let me format it again, just to make sure we're good. Okay, so I have one photo book is $10.99, and I want to, this is going to go into this variable here. So I'm going to call this method compute bill, but it returns something. So I'll create another, I like to do it like this. So double cost of one book. And I'm going to call the method for that. So cost of one book is equal to compute bill and pass it one photo book. Oop. Okay, so I have the photo. I could just very well use 1099 there, but I'll use a variable. The cost of one book is going to be sent to this method called compute bill, and it's passing it 1099. So it comes down here, it accepts 1099. It says the total due is 1099 plus 1099 times 0.08, and then it returns the total due. So let's test it. System.out.println. Well, let's use printf. The cost of one photo book is working from memory, %.2f. I need to put my \n for the new line, and I want to put a $sign here. And then printf uses a comma. Cost of one book. And close parentheses. There we go. All right. So we have one class. We have one main that has our local variables to main. This is our method call, or invoking a method right here. And it has to be set equal to a variable because this method right here returns a variable. And this has a scope local, so this is a local variable, and the scope is total due can only be used in there, but we return it out of the method. It now is called the cost of one book here. So let's run. I have no errors, so let's check our IO. Oh, maybe you see my error. The errors I make. One phone book. No, it's not a phone book. It's not a phone book. It's a photo book. I think I called it one photo. Okay, let's try again. Be happy to see I make errors too. That was a really silly one. Run input output. It's compiling. Project run. The cost of one photo book is $11.87. Is that right? Probably. 10.99 times 0.08 plus 10.99 is 1186.92. Yeah, and I use printf to round it off, so it's pretty. I like pretty code. Okay, let's go on to our second method, period 2 or bullet point 2 on 235. Write another method. So we're inside our class still. We're inside our class still, and we're overloading compute bill. So we are using the same name, but we have to have different arguments. We're going to pass it the cost of one book, which is $10.99, and then it says it receives two arguments. They represent the price of one book and the quantity ordered. And quantity. Whoops, no semicolon there. Open, close, end of the second method. Now, why they call it overload is because it's the same name, it's doing the same thing, but it's accepting arguments. So what we would do here is we could do the same thing. Double total due equals 0. Now, again, this is a local variable. It's only seen in this method. So I can use the same name here because it has a different scope than this variable here. The scope of this variable is only in this method. The scope of this variable is only in this method. So they can be called the same thing. Total due is going to be equal to the amount of one book times the quantity. And let's put the parentheses around here. So 1099 times 3, for example, plus, I should probably create another variable. Let's create a subtotal. You don't have to, but it'll make more sense. Another local variable. Okay, subtotal is equal to amount times quantity. So 1099 times 3 books. And then the total due, well, let's create 3. We'll do it, I like to do it, do this in steps, so it's easier to see how you're calculating. And we know how tax works and everything. Okay, so our tax is going to be equal to the subtotal times 0.08, and then the total due is going to be equal to the subtotal plus the tax. Yeah, and we are returning total due out of this method. Oops, no parentheses. Okay, so we have an overloaded method, and it takes into quantity. So this, when we call it in main, we have to call it something different. So let's create another variable, double multiple books. And I'm going to say the cost of multiple books is, fat-fingering that, the cost of multiple books is compute bill and send it the cost of one photo book, and then how many do we want? Say 4. And let me copy my printf here, paste it here because I'm going forever, so let's copy and paste where we can. And change this. The cost of multiple photo books is mult books. Okay, compile and run. Let me clear what I have. Run it again. The cost of one photo book is $11.87. The cost of multiple photo books is $47.48. So that would be 4 books plus the tax of that. So you know, what I think I'm going to do is stop here, and I think for our assignment we're going to take this code with me that we have here, and we know it's working, and we'll create another overloaded method that takes in a coupon. I think what we'll do is change this 4 to something that the user inputs. But I think that this is a good start for an actual assignment where we have something set up. We're only going to have one file called billing.java to turn in, so not like the test bank account files. And we just focus on one concept, which is, well, the blocks and scope and overloading methods. But I think that this is a good place to stop because I've probably been talking already for an hour. So save your file and attach this, make sure you put your name on there. But this is the Code With Me Learning Module 6 for Chapter 4, Generate CSD. And then save this program. Make sure it's working. I'll just go through mine. And when we start our Learning Module 6 assignment, we're going to take this code and modify it. So I probably won't make a video, but I'll give you very detailed instructions on what you'll do for that. One of the other things that I was going to do is how to use the math method, and that is on page 215 of your book. Let's just go to that real quick. Math is a class. I just said method, but math is a class, and it has a whole bunch of methods like absolute value or random or min and max, and it takes arguments. And these arguments get sent out to the math class and return things that and do their thing, and then returns a value. So like round, for example, on page 217, this it rounds a number to the closest integer. Where x is a float or double, it returns the value of an int or a long. So round we can't use for rounding a double, it just truncates it, but it is good for when you do have a decimal value and you want it to be a whole number. Square root is useful. You don't have to write the code that returns the square root of something. But the one question I was going to have you code is the math test program in the back of the chapter. But I don't think we'll need to do that. Maybe I'll add it into the quiz. So that's all for this Code With Me. I hope, that's not bad, 45 minutes. Get this program running, so that you can use it for your homework that I'll post along with this learning module. And thank you. Send me an email if you don't want to see my face again, and I will never do that again. Promise. Have a good day, night, evening, morning.